If you've been waiting for Star Citizen to feel like a real MMO, 2026 might be the year it finally starts to shift. It's not just because of one big feature, but because the many parts that make an MMO feel alive may start connecting, and the game might begin to handle more people in the same areas without completely falling apart. If you want the game to start rewarding long-term play, this is the year that could decide whether resources, rare materials, and high-tier loot turn into real value, or whether they just end up taking more inventory space and you never actually use them. So the real question is simple. Do you think 2026 will be the year Star Citizen starts crossing into MMO territory? Or will it still feel like a universe that looks incredible, but doesn't yet reward long-term progression the way a real MMO should? Now, this isn't just a list of features. It's what happens when players finally have a reason to group up and engage in specific activities. When I say feels like an MMO, I'm talking about identity. An MMO starts to feel real when you can log in on a random night and you already know what's going to happen. People show up to the same places for the same reasons. They form groups without needing a full briefing on Discord. They fight over value by defending it, moving it, and stealing it. And that only works if the game has a higher population density, which means more people in the same areas at the same time. But that also means that the servers have to hold up when everyone shows up, because if performance collapses under pressure, none of the systems matter. It just becomes a louder version of the same problems that we already deal with. If you're the type of player who enjoys crafting and base building, your entire world revolves around one question. Does value convert into progress? Because you can have loot everywhere and still feel stuck if none of it truly connects. Once blueprints demand specific materials and quality actually matters, the universe stops being random. People start running routes and certain places become pressure points. Then crafting converts those inputs into real advantages players will chase. The kind that change how your weapon handles, how your armor performs, and what you can build next. At that point, base building multiplies the whole loop because it creates ongoing demand. Bases needing maintenance, upgrades, defense, and expansion. That keeps miners, salvagers, haulers, and crafters busy. And the glue that makes it all intentional is exploration. If scanning and radar become more meaningful, it will change everything. Because value stops being accidental. We already see this with meaningful changes to the star map, where we can see what planets and moons have different types of resources. Once scanning and radar mechanics are fully developed, you'll finally begin planning your runs more, scanning for a better payoff each time, and committing because the information says it's worth it. That's when the universe starts producing real friction, the kind of friction that makes the game a true MMO. And once those routes form, some of the hotspots people try to avoid are no longer optional. They're inevitable. Hotspots are where Star Citizen could shine even more than it already does, especially once the rewards match the danger. They're what turn a playable space into a universe with patterns, pressure, and conflict. The moment a location becomes truly valuable, a gameplay loop forms on its own. People show up for the same reasons. Combat players start escorting industrial crews. Pirates start hunting those runs. And orgs start planning around all of it. Now, not every hotspot exists for the same reason, but these locations become a bit more important because they feed crafting, quality items, and long-term demand. Hawthorne facilities in Stanton fit that mold. It's the kind of place that can become a magnet over time. Rockbreaker in Nyx is another. Nyx is likely to attract a different kind of traffic because the risk and distance will ultimately change if something is profitable. This is where I think we'll start seeing orgs and groups plan more deliberately. And then there's Stormbreaker and Pyro. While much of it has become pointless since its inception, it will start to become an economic hotspot as well, because Valkar teeth and pearls are exactly the kind of resource that can turn into a crafting choke point. If those materials matter, Stormbreaker will likely matter once again. Now, there are other locations that won't function like open world hotspots because they'll be more structured in an instance, as CIG has stated. Because they'll still matter, because they're where repeatable progression lives, providing high-tier items, narrative objectives, and content you can run on every day or every week. Siege of Orison is the obvious example, but only if it returns with more phases, clearer roles, better flow, and becomes something you can run again and again without it feeling like a one-time theme park ride. Municipal Works and Nyx is the same idea, just on a smaller scale. This is where you get locations that combine rare materials, high-value items, and story-shaped gameplay. Onyx facilities are what I believe would fit as a perfect location for this. Asteroid bases in Pyro could also fit in the same realm. CIG could make them more than just random structures in space and become design spaces by making them larger and more involved. And I do think there's a logical future where some of these locations get more control scaling, because once these become high-value routine targets, they need to be playable and consistent, but also randomized enough to be more unique between each location. Then we've got the PvP-focused spaces. Contested zones and executive hangars in Pyro clearly fall into this category. These aren't just valuable because of loot. They're valuable because the fight is also part of what draws players in. If you enjoy these kind of deep dives, hit subscribe. I'm going to keep breaking down what actually shows up in game, how everything connects, and what it means for crafting, progression, and the MMO shift as 2026 unfolds. So when we talk about instancing, I'm not bringing it up as some magic fix, and I'm not arguing that everything should be turned into a theme park. We're talking about locations that will attract repeat traffic for various reasons. Players will farm rare materials, high-tier rewards, and progression tied to missions and blueprints. The moment that traffic becomes predictable, you get the MMO behavior that you expect to see. But you also get another problem. Can those activities stay playable when everyone else shows up? That's where instancing becomes a lever that CIG can use. Not to replace the sandbox, but to protect the parts of the game that are meant to be run repeatedly. Instancing gives CIG a way to keep objectives, AI mission logic, and performance stable enough that you can schedule the run and trust it will work. This is also how you can get rotating objectives, procedurally varied layouts, different enemy compositions, and maybe even daily modifiers without turning the whole thing into absolute chaos. It keeps runs from going stale while still letting players plan. Player caps and controlled access keep fights in the range where skill and coordination matter, while still keeping the danger and the stakes. Instancing really should amplify what we already like about Star Citizen, not erase it or replace fun sandbox gameplay. If it's used carefully, it will keep those high-value activities playable and repeatable as population density rises. If it's used poorly, it will fragment the verse and strip out the natural pressure that makes the economy and hotspots feel meaningful. So the question isn't, is it instanced? It's whether instancing makes those activities work at scale without breaking the shared world feeling we're chasing. When Genesis comes online, even if it's a slow rollout, it becomes a big deal because it changes how fast the universe can gain more believable planets and biomes. If we only see a couple of planets this year, that's still momentum, because it's a pipeline that will expand rapidly over time. Now, starting with Nyx 1 is important for a different reason. Nyx is already positioned like a region that could support a deeper economic identity. Not only does it serve as another place to visit, but also a place that feels different in what it offers and what it demands. Then there's Starchitect. It's essentially how CIG can turn what seems like fairly empty planets and moons into local activity spaces. More POIs can likely mean more routes, missions, and reasons to actually explore, and reasons to take risks. But there's a caveat to that, because simply having more POIs won't make the universe feel any more lived in if it doesn't have missions that you can spend a few hours at without ever leaving. It has to add something to keep players engaged. More places worth going will ultimately create more movement, which creates more interaction. And interaction with the world around you is where the MMO feeling comes from. Honestly, I'm not looking for a perfect year. I'm just looking for clear signs. First, activities need to stay playable when crowded. If Stormbreaker or Rockcracker become the kind of place where everyone shows up and the game holds together, that's already a huge shift considering the current state of Stormbreaker. Second, rare materials and high-tier loot need to feed real progression. Third, exploration needs to become more intentional. If scanning and radar make it easier to identify opportunity, risk, or key areas to find resources, exploration starts feeling like we're finding something valuable. Group play needs to become easier to form and maintain. If people can group up, rejoin, coordinate, and run activities without constant friction, the universe starts feeling populated for a reason. This is honestly where CIG's new upcoming social tool rework comes into play, which many are desperately hoping drops this year. Additionally, the story spaces need to become repeatable content that doesn't feel stale after the first few runs. And finally, the economy needs to start pushing back and become something that we actually interact with. That means we need sinks, upkeep, risk, loss, and demand. So is 2026 the year Star Citizen starts to feel like a real MMO? I think it has a real shot to be the year that this shift begins, but only if each of the systems actually connects in some way. That means higher population density should become normal in the places that matter, and the game should hold together when the crowd shows up. If crafting and base building start connecting to resource quality that actually matters, then the verse will begin to stop feeling like a connection of disconnected systems and start to feel like it's alive. But if everything stays fragmented, if the servers can't handle the pressure, and if value still doesn't translate into real progression, then it's going to look incredible like it always has, but still feel like the same loop with better scenery. But what do you think? What's the one system that has to land this year for you to say Star Citizen is starting to feel like an MMO? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. And if you want to support these deep dives and help me keep making more of them, consider becoming a channel member. It directly supports the time it takes to research, test, and break all of this down in a way that actually respects your time. As always, thanks for watching. Fly safe, pilots, and I'll see you in the verse. Havoc out.